Welcome back to my channel. My name is Amie, and that's the first time I've ever said my name on my channel because I find introducing myself incredibly awkward. I want to talk about some overhyped books. I don't often pick up super hyped books. I tend to have a lot of backlist titles on my channel, but every once in a while I do pick up something that is very popular, and you know, sometimes you like things, sometimes you don't. Oftentimes I don't. So here are some books that I think are not worth the hype. Obviously, this is just my opinion, so here we go. The first book I want to talk about is Illuminae, or just in general, The Illuminati Files by Amie, Kaufman, and Kristoff. Obviously, this is an insanely hyped book here on Booktube. Everyone seems to die hard love it, and boy, do I not get the hype. This is a space adventure type of book. Book one has to do with this kind of contagion situation that breaks out on this spacecraft. The main character is trying to get back kind of with her ex-boyfriend throughout this situation. There's also like this overarching government conspiracy thing, and overall I just don't like it. I read the entirety of book one in physical form. I listened to the entirety of book two on audiobook, and I have started book three and I'm like 20% through it. When I read book one, the thing is, it's such an easy read. So I had no problem getting through the book, but I just didn't care about it. And I didn't get the hype then, but people suggested I try the audiobooks. So I decided to get the second audiobook and listen to it. And once again, it was an easy thing to get through. But once again, I just didn't get why it was so popular. But I figured, why not just listen to the third audiobook just to finish it? I am a completist. Usually if I start a series, especially if I get 2 books into a series, then I want to finish it, especially since there's only 3 books. One of the biggest issues I have with this series is every single character is the same. Every single character talks the same way. They all have this pithy banter going back and forth. And that's great, I love banter, but when all the characters talk the same way, it's just not good writing. I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care if they lived or died. I don't care about the plot line. There's just nothing keeping me hooked. I don't get what people love about the series. I don't get how people could be really invested in these characters. And overall, I just thought this series was pretty meh. The next book is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. I wanted to love this book so bad, and I thought for sure that I would. This just feels like everything that I would like in a book. I love teenage detective stories. I also love the show Sherlock. So the idea that we're getting like Sherlock's descendants in high school solving crimes, that sounded so right up my alley. Unfortunately, this book was just a huge disappointment for me. There was something about the writing that did not compute with my brain. I just found the sentences and the prose so weird. Like, I really can't explain it, but the way that I read the sentences in my head, it just like didn't flow properly. There was just something about A Study in Charlotte that didn't work for me, especially the ending. The big reveal of who is framing Jamie and Charlotte is so frustrating because Charlotte should have been able to figure this out from day one. If she is this genius detective, if she is this genius that the book is making her out to be, this should have been so obvious to her. Another thing that bugged me was the immediate kind of flirtation between Jamie and Charlotte, because I don't know, I was just expecting it to be a complete slow burn, and it just felt like their connection was too forced and too immediate. So overall, just wasn't my favorite book, but I am going to continue on with the rest of the series and hope and pray that I like the rest. The next book that I think is overhyped is TheOne by John Mars. I love this premise. The idea that there's a company out there that you can send your blood to and they will find your soulmate, your true love. I think that's super interesting, and I think the ideas that he came up with for this book are really good. I just don't think they were explored properly. I think there are about 5 different people we follow in this book, and each one of them is really interesting. We follow one couple that involves a serial killer. We follow one couple where the man is engaged and it turns out his soulmate is another man, even though he didn't realize that he could have feelings for another man. We follow one woman who is matched with a guy who is dead, another one that is matched with a guy who is dying, I think. I can't remember. And then I think there's even another one I'm forgetting about. I don't know. There was a lot of couples, and that was my biggest issue with it. Because there were 5 different point of views and 5 different storylines to follow, it just felt like none of them were fleshed out as well as they could be. Storylines were interesting, but I didn't care about any of the characters because there just wasn't enough time to become attached to them. I feel like this could have been fleshed out so much more if we'd cut a couple of the storylines. I also just felt like the endings to each of the storylines was incredibly predictable and way too easily tied up. The next book is Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. This book was put forth as some grand feminist tale about women's anger, about their revenge, and about sexual assault, and I just loved the idea of so much of that, and boy did it let me down. It was not feminist, in my opinion. There was a lot of slut shaming, like a lot. I don't know, just so much of it felt so icky to me. There was 3 different storylines. One was who I'd consider the central character, and her sister was raped and murdered many years ago, and it talks a lot about her anger about this, obviously, and not even just about this, but just the anger that's built into her since she was a child. And I thought her character was really interesting, and if we had just followed her, I feel like, yes, this would have been a feminist tale, but unfortunately there were 2 other perspectives. One was the main character's love interest, who I hated. I don't know how he was considered love interest, and I kept thinking that we were going to come back around and he was going to learn something, or he was going to be punished for his way of thinking, but it wasn't. Like, I think he was truly thought to be a good guy, despite the fact that, like, his thoughts about women were so frustrating, and I just wanted to wring his neck because he just kept thinking that women should, like, behave the way he thought. Then the other POV that we followed was the main character's, like, new best friend, and her point of view didn't really give me much. I didn't really care about it overall, but she was the one who had a lot of slut shaming in her head. And yeah, overall I can't recommend this book, and I really didn't like it. I just feel like I read a completely different book than everyone else because I just don't get it. The next book on my list of overrated books is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. So I could probably add a lot of Penelope Douglas's books into this list because I'm just not a huge Penelope Douglas person. When I first read her books, I liked them because they were kind of the first smut novels I was getting into, but since I've read more, I'm just realizing that I really don't connect with Penelope Douglas's characters. And Punk 57 was definitely my least favorite of all of her books. Punk 57 is following this girl in high school and her love interest, who they used to be pen pals, they've never met each other, then eventually he kind of drops off the face of the earth, and she ends up running into him in real life because he starts going to her school, except she doesn't know that this is the person she's been writing to her whole life. And everything kind of goes from there. To me, Punk 57 is what you would get if you absolutely love Peyton and Lucas from One Tree Hill. Like, they are so that couple, and I hate them, and I hated Peyton and Lucas, so that makes sense. They're just like those angsty teenagers who are super popular, but like they think they're loners. I hate it. I hate it so much. I found everything that came out of their mouths was so pretentious and just so ridiculous. And yes, I do think that this was very teenage love story, and it kind of fits in that, like, you know, teenagers are dramatic. This is what we all acted like in high school. Like, we all think that, like, our love story is the love story to end all love stories when we're there. So I get it, but I hate it. I gave this 2 stars because I just had the hardest time getting through it. I forced myself to get all the way through it, and it just never became good, in my opinion. The next book is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. I have bitched about this book a lot. It was my #1 most hated book of last year. I truly don't understand why people like Neil Gaiman. it doesn't make sense to me. I tried reading Sandman, the comic book series that he came out with by Neil Gaiman, this month, and I DNF'd it after 2 issues because holy shit was the experience reminding me of American Gods, where I just try and push my way through, and like, it's such a miserable experience for me because it's just so boring. I thought American Gods was gonna lead to something. I mean, we're driving all over the country and meeting all these different gods, but like, it built to nothing. Like, if you are expecting some war or something interesting at the end of this book, just give up now because it is not coming. A nearly 800-page book, and I have very little to say on it because nothing happened. They just drove around and had different conversations, and that was it. And I did not find this as profound as some people did. I feel like Neil Gaiman has this very like academic way of writing that makes you feel smart, I guess, but like, I just find it so pretentious, and I can't stand it. The next book on this list is An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. This is a very Agatha Christie style murder at an inn where everyone's kind of snowed in and people start dying one by one. They need to figure out who the killer is. I don't have a ton to say about this. I just found this very surface level. There's many different point of views. I feel like you don't totally ever really get invested in the characters. I thought that the killer was very, very obvious because eventually you stop going to that person's perspective, so it becomes pretty obvious that they're the killer. I don't have anything truly terrible to say about it. I just felt like the writing was very simple and not that interesting. And then the last book on my list is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I wanted to love this so bad. I love The Exorcist, and so if you say the word exorcism and book, movie, TV show, whatever, I am in. But this just did not do it for me. This is a story about a girl whose older sister had some sort of problem, and they decided to call in a priest to give her an exorcism because they believe that, or at least the dad believes, that she's been taken over by a demon. They convinced this family to do a reality show around her exorcism and around what's happening to her. I love this premise, and I would probably enjoy it as a movie. I think this is a movie, not this book, but just like this idea has also been made into a movie at some point. Unfortunately, I found the execution was not great. One of my biggest problems was that it just wasn't scary. There was no scare factor there. There was no real horror factor there. So there's that, but my biggest problem overall was that there were very short chapters kind of every so often sprinkled throughout the book that were from this blogger's point of view, and they were so ridiculous because it felt like the author wanted to analyze his own book. Like, he wanted to really spell out the themes of what is happening here. And you can't fucking do that. You don't get to spoon feed the audience every single thing that they're supposed to be thinking. It is so frustrating and annoying, and it just made me think, like, why am I reading this? How am I gonna review this if he's already reviewed it himself? I just didn't find the experience enjoyable. It was really irritating. And I don't know, it had that like very blogger feel where everything's supposed to be a punchline or like an aside and a joke, and it was so cringy. I hated it. I did like the ending, so that's nice, but yeah, I wasn't a fan. So those are all the books I think are super overhyped, but obviously that's just my opinion. I hope you liked this video, and I hope you'll come back again soon. Bye.